Coming up on the Talking Truth podcast. Sir, what does being a type 8 mean?
Stubborn.
Okay.
Strong-willed.
Okay.
If you're that strong-headed person and you're just like, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, you're not really taking a look at yourself and being like, well, Alan, this could be a personality trait that you may want to just assess and look back on.
Are type 8s really rare, or might they just be a type more focused on?
It was one of those times where, again, like a headlock that turned into just like, oh shit. Like, why was I doing it in the first place, right? We could go back to that and say, why would you do it in the first place? So I would say that I would be band leader, driving force to get things done. Determination, drive, and ambition, almost like empathy, right?
Yeah.
Acceptance, where you're just like, what things do you want to control and what things don't you want to control?
I think you just said it perfectly. What did you say? The father figure and like the fun uncle.
Yeah, the fun uncle.
Yes. So that's like again, I love this, without necessarily even knowing the technicalities of the Enneagram. That's like that 8 wing 7 vibe that you kind of just said really perfectly, actually. All right, everyone. It's been a while, but welcome to another episode of the Talking Truth podcast. And this is going to be an exciting one. It's kind of a continuation of our last one that we had with Chris, and even going back a couple other ones, because our guest today has come up in a couple podcasts thus far. We've talked about him a bit. So today we're going to get his perspective on things. We're joined by Alan here.
Hi.
What up? And yeah, you've come up a bit because you were part of the band that we talked about quite a lot with Chris's podcast. And then, like I said, even going back. So I think we'll get to all these topics and more. But let's start off with what's your familiarity with the Enneagram in general? Because that's kind of the framework that I nest all these conversations in.
Yeah, so for me, it's mainly what you tell me it is. That's, I mean, at that point, it's pretty much, Alan, I think you're this, based off of the history we have together of the last, high school and everything like that. But I mean, business partners for over, 5 years or so. I just go with what you say. So if I'm a type A, what is it, 8?
What is it, 8? Okay,
8,
so
right? That's
you have some idea
8.
that you're a type 8.
Yeah.
And you say that's probably what I suggested, but at least have you looked, do you agree with that? Have you looked up the Enneagram at all to read about the types and be like, yeah.
Yeah,
or,
I have, and I've done some research and not a whole ton, but enough to where based off of what you've said to me, I'm like, all right, I gotta see if this is the exact thing that Elliot, is talking about. And you start reading through everything and you're like, yeah, I think that's it's pretty good.
Okay.
It's pretty good. Now, I don't know if there's anything in between there, if there's more, if there's an 8 and then you're a little bit of an 8 or a 7, or you're just one big type 8.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Who knows? So the question is, anything in between there, can you be multiple types, or are there, am I just a type 8, or how does this So do you know the answer to that, or is that a question?
Maybe that's one we'll divulge into on this podcast.
Well, let's do that.
I'm not sure.
Let's start with what does being a type 8 mean? What do you read and be like, yeah, that makes sense, that resonates, or what does being a type 8 mean?
Stubborn.
Okay.
Strong-willed.
Okay.
Maybe we'll get into this, arrogant, right? Or some sort of cockiness of some sort of thing, I guess.
All right.
Persistence.
Yeah.
Is that, I guess, some kind of, am I going down that line of what the...
Yeah, strong-willed. I think even when we were talking briefly, over this podcast, you used the word alpha male, there's that kind of alpha male vibe to it.
Yeah.
Maybe another word, maybe sometimes asshole gets thrown in there.
That is also accurate. Okay, so we'll just keep bringing more words in, and I'll be like, okay,
word association. No, well, so there's a couple things. Even about. Okay, so first of all, we'll go back and kind of answer your question. Yeah, general Enneagram theory says that you also have something called a wing, which is if you're an 8, but there's this circle, and you're an 8 on the circle, then you're next to 7 and 9. So generally speaking, then one of the types you're next to is going to rub off on you more strongly than the other.
Okay.
And I won't suggest what that is necessarily at this point.
Okay.
Maybe we'll just see if that kind of naturally comes out in the conversation or something like that.
The circle of trust.
Yes, it's all about the circle.
Circle of trust. The circle of trust.
And then furthermore, your number is connected to two other numbers on the circle that kind of explain, okay, so you're this type, and this type is neither good nor bad, but there are healthy and unhealthy expressions or kind of versions of this type. And these two other points that you're connected to kind of speak to ways that when you become unhealthy, it takes on the feeling or the character of this other type.
Yep.
Or conversely, if you're looking to get out, like you're just stuck in like this one way of being that becomes limiting or frustrating or produces suffering, then you can kind of look to these other points that you're connected to as like, oh, I didn't really think like this. I didn't think of being this way. Like it's not intuitive me to act this way or see the world this way. But now if I try it on, like I can see the benefit in that. I can see the useful. I can see how that broadens my perspective or my experience in some way. So,
okay, yeah,
all right,
that makes sense to me.
Okay, so I think my next quick, because I want to labor on this point a little bit, other than like just like kind of accepting like you kind of know about the Enneagram, you looked it up a little bit, and like whatever type you tell me kind of thing. Because I think there's even something worth exploring here, because it's true. Like, I told you about it and you've kind of looked into it to some degree, but it's also true. Like say Chris, the last guest, like I tell him about it and he goes like, oh my God, I need to know everything about, like, I need to study it. I need to become like an awesome student. There's certain people that I'll introduce to this and they'll really take it to it and they'll really become fascinated by it. But then there's others who, like, that's crap. That's just like, this doesn't even make sense, who like totally dismiss it. And then there's others who's like, oh, that's kind of interesting, but like, I'm not going to spend a lot of time like investing in it and trying to learn it. So I'm asking you not like a challenging question, but like you looked it up a little bit, maybe it kind of, but like why do you think you're at that point where it's like, well, I haven't gone crazy investing my life energy into like, so in general, like is personality interesting to you, or is it like, I don't know why I'd need to know all this stuff. Like I kind of know who I am.
Yeah. I think I would be leaning more towards Chris's motion, right? To have more of a view on these things, right? Because again, self-reflection is huge.
Yeah.
Mental health is huge right now, especially all across the world, right? Ever since, post-COVID.
Okay.
But I would admit that I think I'm more of into not the, I don't give a shit about it, or this is okay. I could really kind of take it or leave it, to more of like, what? These things were created for a reason. Mm-hmm. I have a friend that knows pretty much a lot about these things, right?
Yeah.
What can I learn from him?
Okay.
To have a better reflection of myself and, move forward as I, move into my mid 30s, into my 40s, into my 50s. So I'm on full board to learn more all about the Enneagrams.
So what would you say is the reason you haven't done necessarily so up to this point?
I think there was a lot of stuff over the last couple of years that we can get into, where I felt more consumed and wrapped up in a lot of different things, both in my professional and in my personal, to where you just kept going, right? You're full speed ahead and just nonstop, to where you're like, okay, I don't have time to think about this or think about that. But in reality, you are actually at that time limiting yourself to what you can and cannot do.
Sure.
So if you're that strong-headed person and you're just like, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, you're not really taking a look at yourself and being like, well, Alan, this could be a personality trait that you may want to just assess and look back on to prevent you from going further and further down. Like you said, there's two paths, personality traits that are good and bad, right?
Yeah.
So I think for me now that, being outside of a couple other things that have happened, I've been able to take a step back and look at myself and go, okay, being away from, with Up All Night no longer performing, that has taken a huge step forward for me to be like, okay, you know what? I was working with, 4 other people, different personalities, but there's a common goal there. And I believe that's in one of your talking points that we'll get into. But that's a thing where it's like, well, it's got to be this way. But in reality, it really doesn't have to be that way, right? It's like, but I think being away from a situation that you're consumed in or you're passionate about that you love, you kind of have like these blinders on where it's only this, but there's a lot more out here that you can still utilize and bring in to that tunnel, essentially.
Yeah, and this is kind of essentially the point that I wanted to make, because one interesting topic when you kind of get into the Enneagram is people, and then you have these types, and then kind of naturally people want to know, like, well, is one type more common than the others, or is one more rare?
Curious about that myself.
Well, okay, but here's the problem with that, is that you're never getting a random sample of people. You're basing it on people who are naturally interested in it. And because we're talking about personality types, different types may have different levels of interest or willingness to even engage with the Enneagram. For example, in the last one, I've heard this notion that Chris's type 6, is by far the most common type, like 50 or 60% of people. And that came up with Chris, and he was sharing this story where he noticed he went to his church group, and he's talking there, and he's like, oh my God, like 50, maybe even 75% of the people there are type 6s. And I made the case, wait a second, like this is a church group. This is not a random sample of people. This is a people with, a certain set of beliefs, a certain
goals,
set of morals, a certain type of temperament. So rather than trying to generalize that and say, oh, because my group is 60% type 6s, I think 6s are the most common type. I say, what if actually 6s are just predisposed to be interested in, say, Christianity more likely than other types? So they're not the most common type. They're just the type most likely to gravitate towards this
sort of religion,
community or this system. And likewise, I've seen some online tests that suggest type 8 is one of the most rare types. And you could take that at face value and say, well, the test that people took said type 8's rare, so type 8 must be rare. But you could also make the case, and I think this is more close to the truth, that exactly what you said, you have this willful type. You have this type that can have tunnel vision on my goal and my thing I'm trying to accomplish and achieve and bring into this world, that it's, and the strategy to do that is discipline and hard work and commitment and drive and just kind of relentless pursuit. So it's not always apparent like why I would need to take a break from my discipline, drive, tunnel vision focus towards this goal and learn about deeper stuff about myself or like how other people relate or where they get stuck in their fears. So are type 8s really rare, or might they just be a type more focused on practical action taking, and until they go through a hardship in life or until they, mature and have other responsibilities, may not appreciate why they would even need to know about the Enneagram or something like that.
Well, and I think too, a big thing is knowing or being around a person that has a wealth of knowledge in this specific area, right? So you could have a group of people that, I was reading a book, or I was reading this, and it was all done in a book that these people don't even know. They don't even know the author. They don't.
Right.
But where I think we have an advantage as being friends of yours, it kind of makes you think a little bit in a way of, okay, well, you know what? Elliot knows my personality. He's been a good friend. He's bringing these things to light rather be than the 6s, the 8s, 3s, 2s. Then I think you can kind of start thinking, okay, well, you know what? There's a lot of things he's probably, he's making sense on, because he wouldn't be bringing these things up to his friends and saying, just, for all purpose is just saying, well, I'm just saying this just because you are like, you were talking to us at practice, many of times, right? And I think that's where we have an advantage to everybody that's a part of Elliot's life to harness that. And because self-reflection, I think, again, not just self-reflection, but it's definitely opened my eyes. So I'm glad to be on the podcast and talk about this.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's another good point is that, type 8s might have that specific, like I'm not sure why this is relevant or practical. I just want to go ahead. But a general thing with the Enneagram, you have this deep psychological system, but it can be overwhelming. It can be confusing. You might not know where to start. It can seem too theoretical, too conceptual. Different sources may have conflicting information about what's relevant or not. So a general barrier that most anyone could have is like, where do I even start with this thing?
Would you say that a type 8 would also have the issue with acceptance?
Not, again, I've noticed certain types are more resistant to being like, I'm this type. No, I don't want to be that type. But type 8s are usually to be like, yeah, I can be a little much sometimes. I can be a little hard on the edges. Like, I get it. Like some types really have a, like, oh, I don't want to be that type. I can't be, there's like a real hard ability to like, accept that I might be that type. But I think type 8s are usually one of the quicker types to be like, yeah, good and bad. Like, that's me. So
take it or leave it. This is who I am. If you don't like it, it is what it is.
So I want to talk about a little type 8 thing here, going into it. We said this hard-headed, they have archetypal names for each type.
Okay.
And one of them that gets, is useful for type 8, and this can be both in good and bad ways, is the challenger. Like there's this element of challenge, like taking on a personal challenge, taking on some discipline or goal to accomplish, but also like to be sometimes a little provoking or sometimes be a little interpersonally challenging. And I want to dig into that a bit because this is actually one thing that has got mentioned on the podcast before. We were talking about these types, and in one episode with a friend, we had what vibe does each Enneagram type? So, again, instead of talking theoretical, like, oh, this type is these traits, like if you meet this type, like what kind of vibe do they give you? And my friend had said that 8s give the feeling of a friendly headlock. So it's kind of like that playfully challenging, but let's have a little sparring. Like I want to see what you got. And I said they, for a different reason that maybe we'll get to later if you remind me, I said they feel like a deep tissue massage. So it's kind of, but there is this challenge.
Okay. So I do want to hear more on that. That's an interesting analogy right there.
So anyway, one thing that I recognize pretty immediately with you is that there is this kind of like, and I want to kind of figure out or see if you can expand upon where it comes from, but there is this like challenging kind of playful, pranky, provoking kind of thing. And I can't remember exactly what it was with you, but I just remember like we joined this band Up All Night, like whatever, 6 years ago. And I can't remember what it was, but it was something like, I don't wear hats, but it's like I have a hat and like, like if someone comes and flips your hat, and then like they want to see how you respond or like, so it's something like that. Or like say like we're eating like before a show and you're like, oh, can I have your fry? And you just like, so there's like something about you that like does like that kind of thing where you're provoking or you're testing a situation. And I don't know if that's totally unconscious, just fun, or like you're trying to like gather some information about a person in that. But do you know what I'm talking about, first of all?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think for me, maybe it's kind of like that subconscious, some sort of thing that you're just not even opposed to. Because I mean, when I think about it, like the fry, for example, right? It's like, maybe new me, right? It's like not going in and being like, hey, I need that fry or give me that, right? That would be, I feel like that would be somebody else in the band that hopefully we can have on the podcast to go, oh, that food looks good. I'm gonna take that fry. Let me get that fry from you. Alan. But no, I can't say like I would be. in a provoking way.
Now it's it's playful. It's like sometimes it could border on disrespect, but it's, except for one incident we might talk about, like it's mostly playful. But this is what I realized early on, like, because I've seen this before.
I see what you're saying. Okay, I'm looking.
You know, like I've seen this before. I'm like, if I let him just tilt my hat and we laugh about it, like he's like asserted some type of dominance or whatever, and then like every time he wants to play some like prank or joke, like I'm gonna be at the other end of it.
Okay.
So I recognized that early on, and I said, you know what? I have to meet him like tit for tat, and if he's gonna flip my hat, like I need to pour like water on his shirt or something to like establish that if he's gonna play these jokes, like like I'm gonna meet him, like, and it's not gonna like go too far.
Right. It's never like an intentional like harm.
You're right.
It's never this like, I'm not here to bully. I'm not here to, provoke in a rude or mean manner. It's just that, more like the Buzz of Home Alone kind of deal, right? Not everybody liked Buzz, I guess, but
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I see it. But then maybe there are some things that, again, opening me up to these things helps me, become a better person.
But this is the thing. Like, I wouldn't want to get rid of it because it's entertaining and it's amusing, but there is that. So eights have this like core motivation of like power and strength and control. And again, that can become totally disrespectful and domineering, but like,
especially in today's times. We're seeing a lot of different things change in the world, right? Some for the better, some for the worse,
but in small doses, like it's kind of just socially amusing,
Again, it's right. It's
and like maybe there's that self-amusement aspect of it. Maybe that's why you do it, like you could say like, oh, you're trying to figure out like who's strong or who's weak and like who's got a backbone and who doesn't. Like you could say maybe on some conscious level, but at the other level, like it's just kind of amusing and you want to see like who's willing to play with you, like who's willing to recognize like you're kind of like inviting this like playful kind of spar into the.
But a lot of that too over the past few years, I've seen that to be like, looking back on it going, hey, well, just because I flipped your hat, right, doesn't mean you like it.
Yes.
Right. Doesn't mean, you like to be touched. Maybe you're having a bad day, right? And the last thing you want is somebody coming and literally flicking your hat off, even though my intent isn't that to be like, dominant or anything. It's just to just kind of like, dude, like I've had a shit day. Why are you, fucking with me essentially? And it's, that's where I've been able to see a couple different things over the past couple of years.
Okay.
There's still parts of that do live within me, especially people that have been doing this for a long time too.
Yes.
People that are watching probably do know who they are.
Yes. Yeah. So this was the point I was making on the last.
It's definitely, again, it could be a character of mine. But I don't want it to be, where it is like aggressive or somebody's like, dude, just, stop that.
Right.
We're too old for that shit.
Like this was the point first of all, like, it's like you like getting reactions out of people. And with like the one in the band, I think you knew at a certain time, like you could say certain political things. Like, I don't even know if you believe them, but like if I say this, I'm going to like get a reaction out of it. Like you like to see that you have an effect on other people or you can get like a reaction out of them, that kind of thing. There's a little power in that,
Yep.
Again. And then probably to wrap this part of the conversation up, the funniest example of this that came up in a prior episode, I recognize that you do these kind of like little power play challenges. And I said it was important to me to like rise to the occasion and show like, if you take this too far, I'm going to go there with you.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have war. There's another member of our band who didn't, I think, rise to those challenges and kind of let you just, keep getting away with the metaphorical flick of the hat, so to speak. And that resulted in what we talked about. I was talking about eights are like a friendly headlock, but if you don't play with them, then the headlock can tend to get like a little more aggressive or they might not respect you. So long story short, we had this outdoor band gig
And we won't use the objects or anything in the.
Oh no, we will.
those are things we have to strike from the record.
It's already been said, Alan. It's already been said. So I think we need
on where
on a prior podcast I told the story.
which what
Do you not know what I'm talking about?
was it? Quad?
Yes. So we're playing this. Maybe you want to tell the story.
Yeah, so there was a time that, again, I mean, the person's name, if it was on,
Yeah, we can say it at this point. It's been said.
it was just, it was a situation, a few years ago that there was some ladies' undergarments that were laying on the side of the stage. I have no idea how they got there. Outdoors,
Who knows? Yeah.
Okay, so they were not anybody from our band. We don't know whose they were,
Why
or what,
they
or why
were
were they there.
there.
If they were, from, the work event, and we'll,
It's up to the imagination on that one.
it's. But anyways, the point is that there was some of this. There was the women's undergarments, and I proceeded to take a drumstick, and I grabbed them, and I just was like, to one of the other band members, who was also featured on a podcast, Love Him to Death. I was just like, "Hey, look fast," and he looked up, and the intent was for him to move out of the way, but he did not see them coming.
Yes,
and they hit him. They hit him
right in the face.
They hit him right in the face. And again, we all laughed.
Yes,
We did laugh.
we all laughed. Some of them claimed to have puked in their mouth.
Yeah,
but,
it was definitely one of those times where, again, like a headlock that turned into just like oh shit. Like it meant the meant they're like, why was I doing it in the first place? Right. We could go back to that and say, why would you do it in the first place?
Yeah.
But again, the relationship that me and this other band member have, right, over the, how we've grown over the past, almost 6 years, 7 years now, has been great. Right.
Yeah.
So, fun and friendly jokes to some, to others. It's just like, whoa, that's some, some weird shit to do. And, yeah.
And that's a story. And I think just to wrap this up, like, to me, there's no concrete answers here. Like, I don't think you should stop like this at totally, because like it's funny and it's light and it's playful, but it's that situational intelligence that you spoke to. Like, not everyone wants this at this time, and maybe it's not appropriate, but it's like, on some level, like it's the spice of life, and makes.
Yeah.
And I think one big thing that like came out, if I remember, like the speeches, like, kind of at your wedding and thing, like to, everyone kind of like talk, like there's that, oh, he's like people like say you're the asshole, but you're like the lovable, like there were so many people at your wedding that like also spoke to like how much of a social person you are. And
right.
Like when we played band shows for your birthday, like a ton of people come out.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're the crude asshole that no
right.
one likes. It's like, so like those things all like, it makes it fun, and sometimes it goes a little too far, but it's like, if everyone's too clean, then like, it's, it's not fun, So anyway, I don't think there's any, and sometimes it's playful, and maybe sometimes it's testing who's trustable or who's going to stand up. Like, who knows? It's a bunch of things.
Right.
I don't think there's any easy answer to it. But it's a funny observation. It's a funny facet to talk about. I don't know if you have any other closing thoughts on that, but
no, I think you hit it perfectly. I think for me, it was right. Is just being more self-aware of the surroundings, right? It's like, you still have that. Well, that's just Alan. Like, Chris will always say, well, hey, that's just who he is.
Yeah.
Right. And I have a lot of friends that just, over the years have just been like, okay, well, this is Alan. Right. But right. I never, when I have a common goal in mind, right, there's always like this thing of like, when you go into business with your friends, right, I feel like there's this thing of like, okay, hey guys, we're all here for a common goal, right? To have a good time, to succeed in what we do and excel in what we do. Right. And I feel like that's where sometimes that can get kind of lost in translation, where it's just like, okay, well, if you're going to have fun, right, you want to have fun and enjoy doing it, right? But also know that there's a lot of work involved that goes into it, rather it being, right, writing albums, right? You and Laura writing the albums, mixing the albums, producing the albums, right? You essentially could just write the music, record the music, and then have it mixed, mastered, and sent off and have somebody else do it, right? But you are putting in the time and effort into doing this, where you already know that, okay, I've written, I've recorded, but now I know that my time is going to develop by mixing, mastering, and then, of course, releasing, compared to just writing and recording. So you know that your structure of goals, you're not going to want to say slack off, right? You know that it's just like you can't sit back and just go, okay, no, I want this album to be released, so I have to put forth all this effort to make it happen. And I think sometimes that can get clouded when you're hanging out with friends or doing business with friends.
Sure.
That's where I was going with it. I know I kind of went off on a tangent,
Okay.
but see what I'm saying? So it's just like you have the father figure or the nice uncle, right? But sometimes, or the fun uncle, right? The fun uncle. To where, though, there still has to be an assertiveness, but also still the playtime. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And, we talked about earlier that you're this main type, but you also have generally a stronger influence of one of the type next to yours. And all this stuff about, hard work, hard play, like the jokes. This definitely speaks to the type. You have 2 types next to you, and you have a 7 type, which is that kind of fun, playful, like lighthearted, spirited type of type. And then you have the 9 next to you, which is more of a serene, calm, peacemaking, likes to be in nature, and and you do have both types into you, but I definitely think what you just spoke to there really speaks strongly to the in Enneagram terms, like an 8-wing 7. So you're seeing some of that. I think you just said it perfectly. What did you say? The father figure and like the fun uncle.
Yeah, the fun uncle.
Yes. So that's like again, I love this, without necessarily even knowing the technicalities of the Enneagram. Like that's like that 8-wing 7 vibe that you kind of just said really perfectly, actually.
So then would you say for the types, it's always in order? It's not like, oh, well, type 8 wing 3.
Definitely in the beginning stages of Enneagram theory, it's definitely the type next to yours rubs off.
Okay.
And once you get into it, and this is what I'm, trying to teach, once you get into it, you eventually get to this point of exploring all the types in you and seeing that as much as you have this dominant type, and as much as this dominant type of yours has a wing that is not 8-wing 3, but it has to be 8-wing 7 or 8-wing 9 next to you. So like there's these foundational rules that you kind of follow to learn the basics of it.
Yep.
But at some point, you do have to stop over-identifying with, I'm this type, I'm not that type. Because on some level, your type is just a way of categorizing your current level of motivation or preference or fear and desire. And on some level, those things remain constant.
Sure.
But on another level, obviously, as you learn about yourself, in particular, as you learn about your fears or like, things that you should probably let go of, different aspects of being, come into play. And then you have to wrestle with those and figure out what that's all about.
Yep.
So it can be, that's the challenge, of learning the Enneagram that we spoke to, and maybe why it's good to, or assuring if you have someone who knows about it, because
that's huge. I mean, because there, that's already an
there are all
right
these
there.
loose concepts or theories that can be useful at a certain time, but also at a later time may no longer be useful or relevant and may be a little constricting.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge. Yeah. All right. Does that answer that question? Moving on.
I think we can move on. If you feel good, we can
right.
move on.
So we've talked about the band. Let's kind of move into the band, and a couple places I want to start here. Well, I asked Chris the last podcast, like, all these it was a really unique experience. The band's kind of like a family, and you have all these different people with, whether you classified Enneagram or not, different personalities, different walks of life coming together for this common goal. And, I asked him, like, everyone kind of had their different role in the band. What was yours? And you remember what he said?
Did he say, was it band leader?
No.
Owner?
He said, I'm
favorite asshole?
Cheerleader.
The cheerleader. Chris. I thought you asked me. I thought you meant me. Okay,
I'm asking you a second.
Oh, yeah.
Chris said his role was the cheerleader.
Okay.
Like, to just like pump everybody up, make them feel kind of good about themselves, and also kind of like keep everyone from tearing each other's necks off when there was a dispute or, differences of opinions. So anyway, if that's his role, what would you classify your role as?
So I would consider myself, so both myself and Chris were part owners of Up All Night, right? Obviously, I came into Up All Night already. They were established, right? So him and a few other counterparts of his.
Well, obvious to me, but not to everyone listening.
Right. So for those who don't know at home, right? So Chris, the band Up All Night was formed prior to me. I joined the band April of 2015. Yes, I mean, then we had a few members that left. So me and Chris decided to take things in a different direction by partnering together, right? So there's a lot of things that, while Chris saying cheerleader, there's a lot of things that I'm very thankful for him to help me out with over those years. So I would say that I would be band leader, driving force to get things done.
Yeah.
Right. I think that would be my role. But in all honesty, everybody, if one of us failed, we all failed. And that's what I was always saying in practice, right? I'm like, if one of us goes down, we all go down. The five of us, we are what makes this band. It's not me. It's not Elliot. It's not Kaylee. It's not Holly. It's not Chris. It's what we make this band because of what we all bring to the table and how we all, if we're a bunch of siblings, right? We're brothers and sisters, and then we hate each other, and then we love each other, but then we hate each other again. We all come back with the purpose of, just enjoying everybody's time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say I'm the band leader.
Yeah, and that is an interesting story, particularly because it's sometimes easy to be the band leader when you start the thing, right? You're like, well, I started it, I'm the leader. But you got hired as the drummer, yet kind of even then, not as the new guy, became the band leader. And I know, Chris, there was just an interesting dynamic between you and Chris of like respect, but also like kind of playful challenges along the way. And, one of his jokes was like, he wasn't the best drummer, but he had some good business connections. So we got him in the band. But so as band leader, like, what did you bring to the band? I know the answer in some sense, but how did you go from hired drummer to band? Or maybe it was apparent when you got hired because of what they knew you could bring to the band at the time.
Yeah. So I joined the band in 2015. The band opened for obviously the Toys band. Now the old Toys. Prior.
So you provided some opening opportunities. Is that right?
So Up All Night provided prior me to a couple festivals in the area that were opening for the Toys.
Okay. The Toys are, again, to add some context, we're from Milwaukee, and I like to call it like the cover band mecca of the world.
Yeah, it's definitely the cover band mecca definitely hits in Milwaukee.
That may be overselling it a bit, but there's a strong drinking culture around here, and
you need a podcast on church festivals too, the Milwaukee scene with festivals, because there's so many people I talk to in other states that are like, what do you mean? What are you guys talking about? You guys have church festivals that what?
Yeah, so as much as there's, winter can suck sometimes, but that means that summers are all the more exciting. And then we have a strong drinking scene, and we have things like Summerfest, the world's like, I don't know, every festival claims to be the world's largest or the biggest, but
I think with the most stages,
like this,
I think that's the big
it's
thing.
like this. And then we have State Fair, and Summerfest is this huge, like 13-day or 11, whatever music festival, and it goes from noon to the evening. And in the evening, you have big national established bands come in. But throughout the day, from like the noon to even sometimes 8 o'clock slots, you have time for local bands. So there's a lot of opportunity for local cover bands to play at like big Summerfest festivals, at State Fair. And then, yeah, we have a lot of churches who have these kind of like fundraising outdoor festivals in the summer as well, and they'll have bands. So there's a big cover band scene in the Milwaukee area, and this band that Alan mentioned, the Toys, has for a long time been one of the more well-established
through the years.
Bands.
They've been, And I think too, I mean, what's interesting too is, I mean, obviously going on a totally side note here is, the music scene in Milwaukee is completely different than Chicago, right? I mean, you see, you got Nashville, right? You got obviously California, even Minneapolis has a lot of stuff. So I think, the cover band scene here is a lot more exposed and a lot more promoted than maybe in some other areas of the country.
And that brings with it business opportunities, because the starving artists working on their original music, which I know a thing or two about, don't always bring in the big money. But, when you're playing cover songs that everyone likes, everyone knows, you can bring a big draw of people,
that'll do it.
Like, you can start, asking for some legitimate money. So there are some legitimate income opportunities in this. So anyway, let's go back to that.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of great bands in the cover scene here in Milwaukee. I mean, we have a lot of different ones over the years. But so I was approached to audition, and I did not get it the first time.
Okay, yeah,
so
I forget about that.
I did not get it. They went
that.
with somebody else, which was which was perfectly fine. And then I think the drummer had some other commitments, so he ended up moving on to something else. I think he might have been moving, and then they had called me back. And I wasn't sure that I wanted the role. And because there were some changes in the band that were happening, that when I auditioned for the band, some of those members were not going to be a part of the band anymore. And I said, okay. And so I ended up coming and seeing the new hire at the time. And I knew instantly, I'm like, we have something here, right? So I knew right away, I'm like, we have we had great singers that were a part of the band before, but now it's like, kind of like the, Favre and Rodgers era for Packer fans, right? It's like
handoff.
You have Brett Favre, right? And then you have Rodgers, but Rodgers just ends up being such a great person. You just kind of knew, like, okay, we have something special here. So I then decided to join the band, and then there were some changes where, based off of my prior work with being a roadie for another cover band over the 10 years, right?
So you were very familiar with the scene from a young age. What scene did you?
Yeah.
What age did you start becoming associated with these cover bands in the scene?
15.
15, and you start, and is that when you started going to shows, or what age did you? I think you were a drum tech or something at some point?
So I started playing drums in 6th grade.
Yeah.
So then, of course, obviously the
and we knew each other.
Yes, we did know each other going into
we were in like rival high school band kind of things.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
We played soccer against each other.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, Thomas More versus St. Francis.
Okay. All right.
No, wait, no, it was Thomas More. Man, I'm dating myself here. I thought we played together. I thought we played at least 1 or 2 matches.
I don't think we ever played St. Fran. But anyway, this is probably not the most interesting topic.
We would have kicked our ass anyway, because we're not zoom in on this because we got the stellar soccer player right here.
Hey, we won state, man.
Exactly. I mean, my point is proven there.
Yeah.
So anyways, no. So I started playing, and then obviously the cover band scene. So I kind of liked the whole ability of going to cover band shows, and they were playing a lot of pop punk, classic rock. They were doing all the other things, other genres. And it was just something that drew me to the whole live music scene, right? And I think that's where I just became, I started becoming the drum tech and a roadie and just humping
And
gear.
what age was that at?
So, I was 15.
15.
15. Yeah.
I mean, in some of those like bar shows, you're not even supposed to be able to get in it, but more festivals. So
Yeah, so there's a lot of festivals. That was,
so what
I mean,
made
it was,
you want to go from just being a fan in the audience to like, hey, let me be the drum tech. Like, let me hang out backstage. Let me have some role or responsibility in this.
Yeah, I think because I always wanted to play in front of a crowd.
Okay.
I think I always wanted to have it'd be like dreams of being a movie star, dreams of being an athlete or whatever, right? It's there's kind of things that just kind of you kind of grow up with and you're like, man, that'd be really cool to play in front of, just not in the basement, right? Or but that again, work goes into it. You have to play in front of 20 people to play in front of 1,000, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know, just something about that, right? And I liked the way it just clicked with me when I started playing drums. I just like music, right? I think music is the center point to everybody. I mean, if you think about it, right, no matter what we go through in this world, whether it be, in the US, overseas, whatever, somebody has their music that they listen to that helped them get through
Yeah.
anything.
Sure.
Anything, right? I mean, anything.
Yes.
I would say music is the most peacekeeping thing that we have, I think, today.
Okay.
I mean, that's my thought, where it's just, you rather it be hip hop, rather it be R&B, rather it be folk, rather it be rock. There's something there that speaks to people.
And can transcend language and differences. Yeah, certainly.
So that's why I kind of gravitated towards it because I'm just like, something about this. And then of course, again, it's like.
So something about music, but then also something practical about like, hey, if I want to do this, like I should get involved in it. Like I shouldn't just watch from the audience. Like I want to know how it works from behind the scenes. I want to be part of it. I want to know what goes into it kind of thing.
Yep. And determination, right? You're like, okay, in order to do this, you have to put in this.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And it can be for any type of career or hobby. Even hobbies, take a lot of determination and will and, sanity, right? Because, it's like if you believe in something and you're strong about it, it can help.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So you got all this experience roading. Roading, is that the right word?
That's
being
roading.
A roadie. Okay.
Roading. Yeah, it's a roading.
Being being behind the scenes, and then that helped you, or that was an asset by the time that you got hired by this cover band Up All Night.
Yeah, and so when that started, I brought to the band. I said, look, there's been a few bars that I've made friends with over the years by visiting, right? And I'm like, if I ever put a band together, or I joined a band, right? And I wanted to, bring them on and say, hey, look, guys, we have a band here that I think would be a good fit, right? Can you bring us in?
Yeah.
Right? Can you bring us in? And I think that's why Up All Night, we clicked so well, was because we had that, right? We had a great group of people that put together a good show, right? And again, it's all cover music, right? So no matter what, you could see us, you could see another cover band 3 or 4 different times. The chances of you seeing the same thing, same songs, pretty high, right? But as you can attest, we tried to make things a little different. We tried to spin things a little differently. We tried to make things more fun, more interactive. And I think that's where, by bringing or joining Up All Night, I should say, helped me then take that next level, right? Because now it's like, okay, you're a drum tech, you were playing with your original band, right? You were playing shows with that, but then, original music, your buddies were like, hey, we don't want to do this anymore. So you're like, okay, well, I still want to play drums. I still drum.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I was drum tech. I got more familiar with more of like, okay, behind the scenes. And then it was like, okay, well now, do I just want to be a drummer or do I want to start pretty much driving things to be like from the business side? Because
to make it happen. Yeah.
Right.
So when you were hired, even though you weren't an original member, I think it was pretty understood that you weren't just coming on as the drummer. Like you were coming on as this guy with connections maybe, and some type of vision and some type of, like leadership quality.
Yeah, and I didn't want to step on anybody's toes, right? Because, hey, I was the new guy, right? And I'm like, you guys were the ones that put together the band and, brought on the people and everything. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to step on the toes. However, bringing me in, these are some insights that I think we could use. Things that I've seen, things that I've heard, things that I've been through.
Yeah.
From just being in that scene.
Yeah.
So not from a business standpoint, because I was not involved in any of those decisions at all.
Yeah.
With the toys, but studying and learning and seeing methods to people, right? Rather it be just not necessarily the toys. I mean, just I was doing TED Talks, right? Because there's a lot of things that you can take as a leader. And
Wait. What, you were doing TED Talks? What?
I was reading them, watching them on YouTube. So I would read transcripts. So these are, again, some more things that you probably are finding out about me now.
Okay, all right.
But I would do TED Talks and I would see, okay, well, what things can you bring to your management style?
Like leadership kind of
your leadership skills, right?
Okay.
Because, rather you're leading a band or you're leading a team at a restaurant or at, anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Your leadership skills can pretty much do a lot, depending on how you, convey them to your peers. And obviously, Up All Night was not employees by any means. We were all friends. We were all.
That's the other thing about it. I mean, a band is a really interesting, especially when you start making some money. Like it's a really interesting dynamic because it is both a business and a friendship. Yep. And not many things are simultaneously that businessy and that friendy at the same time.
Exactly. You are in a spot where you're like, hey, I get to hang out with my buddies on a Saturday night and go play at a club and drink and have a good time.
But then there's an element of accountability and showing up and doing, it's a very interesting dynamic.
So from my point, you go, okay, well, how can I get this across for other people, right? Do those for other people have the same drive and ambition to take that to the next level, right?
Yeah.
To where like, okay, we're not playing arenas, we're not playing stadiums. You're still keeping that happy medium where you're just like, hey, you know what? I get to go and play in front of a bunch of people, right? Where we've had people, and you were in the band for this, where people would say, hey, you know what? We like coming out and seeing you guys because you guys, you put on a great show, and I'm going through a divorce right now, right? And you're my escape.
Yeah.
Right? So you have people like that come out. We don't know what they're going through, right? That person decided to share that information with us, and I didn't know him, right? He was coming to shows, and he told me, he's like, hey, I come to shows, stand in the back, and he's like, but I just want to let you know that, I'm going through a divorce, but you guys really helped me get through some stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that right there is like a checkbox to me to go, okay, you know what? Tonight we've hopefully we made everybody happy, right? By playing songs that they enjoy, because again, it's like a drug to where like you start singing a song and everybody in that room is feeling something completely different. It could be, the Don't Stop Believin', right? All right, super popular song. Cover bands love to hate to play it, right?
That's point,
just as but at the same time, if you take a perspective and go, okay, well, there's 100 people in the crowd, 200 people in the crowd, 300 people in the crowd. At what point is Don't Stop Believing taking an effect on them? Some are just like, oh, I fucking love this song. Others like, oh my gosh, this was a prom song. This was something that we played at our wedding. This was, so you start seeing, and I think that's maybe where again, more of like getting a little deeper into the thought of music.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I kind of like too. So it's like, it's more so being able to help people, but also enjoy playing. But in order to have those two things, it does come at the cost of trying to put on a good product.
Yep.
And other things that may get in the way.
Yeah. And I think as kind of a leader, that was a source of tension. So I want to go into that because, right, these are your friends, but and you are there for fun, but in some cases there's that need to like keep everyone in like what's our ambition? What's our goal we're driving for?
Yep.
And, so I'm trying to think of how I want to phrase this question, But, with that ambition and that goal, how do you deal with people who may not have that to the same degree and want it to be just purely fun or that kind of thing? It's like you have this vision for what you want it to be. So, that's a place to take that. Another place is, if you have an ambition mismatch, then you can start getting angry or frustrated with people. And, all those are kind of dynamics that can come up. So do I need to phrase that a little more specifically, or does that give you some food for thought to talk about?
I mean, we can go into the short version, or we can do the long version, right? Because there's the domino effect of things, right? And when you start thinking about the market that we're in, right? You have this effect on, okay, well, if you have one person that just wants it to be fun,
yes,
right? You can't, that person can't expect the outcome that they want, in the sense of, okay, if I'm going to go and just have a good time, right? That effort that I put into it, if it's just all fun to you, great. But hopefully all the other business side of things and all the other stuff about being like, because again, if you put in fun and you don't put in the work, you're just like, oh, I just like singing. But then again, you're not accountable, or you're missing things.
Yeah.
Or, right. You're fun. Your type of fun, I don't think, is actually fitting the mold of what fun and as a band.
Your type of fun is limited because it's
correct.
There's a fun element to being good at something. There's
Correct.
a fun to like knowing your parts and feeling confident and not being nervous about messing up or something. And there's a fun to taking it to the next level where you pay for bigger audiences or, something like that. So yeah.
And I think, obviously I can't use me as an example because I play drums, but like, let's just say acoustic guitar, right? You're like, okay, I want to go play at a coffee house.
Yeah.
You go play at a coffee house, and completely different vibe than playing at a nightclub or playing at a festival, right? And you're like, oh, I just wish more and more people would come out, right? Unfortunately, there's certain things that that, okay, well, depending on what path you want to take, okay, I know that maybe I can go and play, Summerfest as an acoustic guitar player, which there are people that do it and they do well.
Yeah.
But I think it just depends on what your ambitions are and what you want to succeed. And the band, when I joined, and still to the day that we stopped, everybody had that like, we wanted to play in front of crowds. We wanted to play in front of people. We wanted to have fun while we were doing it.
Yeah.
But I wanted to always, make the point and say, all right, guys, there comes the work.
Yes.
And that work is learning your parts, showing up to shows, leaving shows late, right? You'd have to get there early to sound check and get all this stuff. And I think one of my favorite bands of all time is Blink-182, right? And they did an Instagram live a few months back, and they were at the venue at like 9 a.m, right?
Sure.
So they're on their bus, whatever, right? Now, granted, big differences here from a national touring act compared to a cover band in Milwaukee.
Some cases, but we had some early load-ins.
But right to where he's like, okay, he's like, here we are. He's like, I won't see any of you guys for at least another 8 hours.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, sound check doesn't happen for another 6.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, but here I am having to be here. Right. And again, this is kind of going with the, okay, you want to play to a decent amount of people, or you still want to play in front of people? First, there's a lot of things that come with that. There's a lot of things that just come with it, where you're just like, shit, I don't want to do this anymore. You're like, especially for anybody that doesn't have snow in their area, doing shows like this when it's icy conditions, it's super, super cold, and you have to drive through stuff. It's a whole different ball game.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, on that note, so again, you're kind of playing this role of like being that source of like, hey, we all have this desire. I kind of see that as a kind of a fundamental. It's like we all have this desire, but like, don't fool yourselves about like how what actually goes into it. Like, it's fun to fantasize.
Right.
It's fun to have goals, but like,
Right.
don't fool yourselves. And again, that's where it's like, it's like, oh, well, they're being the asshole, but it's like, in some cases, they're just speaking the truth that like, so it's not an easy line to draw between like keeping people accountable, but also respecting where they're at in life or what hardships, they're going through. So one question I asked Chris was, you were co-managing this band with Alan, and you guys both kind of rubbed off on each other. And he said, he identified as the cheerleader. And he said one thing and I asked, well, what did you both get out of each other, where you by co-manage this band, because it's kind of a unique relationship. And he said, well, Alan helped me realize, like, I don't always have to be the cheerleader. Like, I don't always have to people please. Like, sometimes, I can be like, this is what I want.
Yep.
This is what's important to me.
Yep.
And like, I'm sorry if that brings a little conflict, but like, I got to speak up for myself.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've said to Chris a handful of times and to other people is know your worth, right?
Yeah.
Know what you're worth and what you're capable of. There are things I know, right? That I'm like, like Chris, where he's like, I just should be more vocal in certain situations, right? And I'm like, absolutely. I'm like, be vocal in it, rather it be in the band or rather it be into, because sometimes I say, well, my opinion just doesn't go over. And, it's not easy, having 5 different opinions, right? You have, and then I think that's a huge reason why certain bands succeed and fail, right? Because you have so many different cooks in the kitchen where you want to be able to be like, okay, you know what? All right, no matter what, like Enneagram stuff, I don't know anything about it, right? But I'm going to be like, you know what? If I'm sitting in a group of people and we're all here for the same purpose, but Elliot is like, hey guys, I feel like I know the most about this based off of history and things. I'm going to be like, you know what? I'm going to put my eggs all with Elliot because I trust him that he will lead us to, he'll lead us to success.
Yeah.
And so, Chris definitely, I think over the years, he's been more vocal, right? Rather just not just for the band, but maybe just in life in general.
Yeah, so I think that's a positive impact that you had on him. And now I want to reverse the question, because he is that more kind of, I don't know how to say it, but, concerned about how is everyone doing, or I want to make sure I get. So what impact did he have on you, would you say, co-managing the band with him? If you had this positive impact on letting him be more assertive or stand up for himself, like, what do you think was some of the biggest, like, interpersonal lessons that you learned throughout the course of like being this band leader in terms of relating to the people in the band or even beyond that?
Yeah. So I think for me, what Chris rubbed off on was that more of the, almost like empathy, right? Yeah. So we're like, I have this goal and we all come in here having this goal and we want to put the drive in. But as we're trying to put that drive in, there's hiccups along the way, right? Mm-hmm. Where those hiccups, for me, I'm like, come on, guys. I know you have this. I know you have it. I know the potential. Yes. We've done it before. We've been through this. We'll get through it, right? Where Chris kind of rubbed off on me was how I was conveying that dialogue to people. Mm-hmm. So instead of like we've been through this before. Come on, do this. It might come off as being like, again, abrasive or asshole-ish, if that's even a word. So where Chris has been more like, well, hey, let's see where we can basically kind of meet in the middle. Because again, not everybody is a type 8, mm-hmm. right? Or not everybody is that way.
Yeah.
So that's what I think Chris rubbed off on me. And I think then again, even being away from when Up All Night was finished, was taking the step back and seeing, hey, all right, there's, and Chris is a great person, right? Yeah, I won't discredit that. He's been great, and he's been through a lot. We've been through a lot. And So yeah, I'm glad to see that both of us through the years have been able to rub off.
Yeah, I think.
So there's a little bit of a 6 in there too. I guess it's kind of my wing. Maybe.
Well, not your wing, but again, you got all types in you. You could make that case that 8s are connected to 5 and actually a 2 type, which is the heart type, which is actually a super like caring, empathetic, the big softy under. But and Chris said that, I know he's got a good heart under all that exterior, but
I try.
I think you hit it. I think for me, the course of the band was like, again, there's some rough edges at the beginning, but you were never like the domineering, I'm using you all and I'm like trying to fuck you over to like advance my own agendas. But, it was that like, let's move this forward, let's accomplish something. And that could be abrasive. But I mean, to your credit, I personally like working with you because, I never took some of the, I can stand the abrasiveness fine and, some other people can't. So like that was never really an issue for me, but it was fun to watch over time as I think you became a lot more adept at balancing that challenge between leading people towards this goal with drive and intensity, but like relating to them where they're at and understanding where they're at. And just, finding that balance between moving this project forward as a business while also valuing the friendships and the camaraderie of the group. And that's not an easy balance to strike, but definitely I think over the course of the band, you became a lot more skillful at finding a nice balance between valuing people, enjoying people, but also being that kind of organizing, driving force.
Yeah.
And that is a bit of the 5 part of 8, the more analytical learning about people, taking a step back, studying my own patterns, studying my own effect that I'm having on other people that I might not realize. And then B, like genuinely enjoying them, genuinely caring for them, genuinely valuing them.
And it's rare that you harness a good group of people in a certain situation like that have a common goal that are actually genuinely great people.
Yeah.
That is to where at the end of the day, they're just generally good people. And I think that's something that is hard to come by, and I think again, going into certain things of where rather it be because not only do you want to be in a band with people that you love and you're friends with and you do anything for them, but at the same time, you want to make sure that the mentality is still in there with that common goal, but you don't want divas. You don't want arrogant, guys or gals that think that they're better than the rest of the band. Cause that can get lost too, right? I mean, especially in the music scene, right? There's a lot of people out there that probably are in music that go, hey, you know what? If it wasn't for me, this band wouldn't be what it is.
Yeah.
And I've never taken that approach. I have always been like, you can, everybody's replaceable, right? You think about it like that. But what isn't replaceable is the chemistry that you can utilize for your group. And I think that's what we've always had for, since you joined the band. And I can't speak for prior years. Before I was in the band, but I mean, from when I joined the band, the chemistry was great, and it only just evolves over the years.
Yeah. So I want to talk about. So we kind of discussed how you had the positive impact on the 6 by letting him be more, or urging him towards being kind of more courageous, more assertive, more stand up for yourself. He had the positive impact on you by, hey, think about how you're affecting people in this way and maybe relate to them in this way. So what you actually want, the point gets across in a way that's well taken and like everyone wins.
Yep, exactly.
And I want to talk about also a little bit of, I can talk about the effect that the impact of you and I, because your dominant type is 8. My home base dominant type is 5. And those two are connected on the, so you have to integrate some qualities of like the 0.5 of kind of what I represent. And likewise, I have to integrate some of the qualities of the 8, right? And we mentioned something earlier that I want to get back to, but the first thing I want to say is like, God, man, I love being in band with you. And like,
It's a good time.
I think, so this is going to speak to the 8-5 dynamic. Like, we talked about like, you're out there, you're managing things, you're booking the shows, like you're talking to the venues, you're selling the product, like you're making sure everything is set up as a machine, like on the business front and where everyone needs to be and all that kind of thing. And that's kind of the 8 leader role. And the degree to which that frees like the 5 up, like my role was to kind of be not the band leader, but the musical leader.
100%. I mean, that's even coming in when I hired you, right? It was like, when me and Chris talked about it, and Chris like, he's like, I want to do what's, he's like, dude, do what's best and what you think. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, but that was again for me where I'm just like, look, I'm not everything, right? I needed somebody, and then the fact that what you brought to the table and the ideas, it was so new and fresh.
Yeah.
It was.
So like there was this very clear division of roles. Like you're going to lead on this business front, and like I kind of get the reins to be like, this is how the song should be arranged. Like this should play these parts. This is how maybe the set list should be arranged, and then this is how these things flow into that. Like it was just a kind of awesome experience where, I think the roles were clear, they were defined enough, and they were different enough that like, again, as much as there were some challenges with other people, I think we had a pretty frictionless, like you do your thing, I do mine. And yeah.
But I think what helped with that too was also, I think you having that previous experience of being in a touring band.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got it, you understood it. But quite frankly, you knew it better, right? And that's where I'm like, I don't want to try to even know how some of that stuff even goes. Just like when it comes to singers, right? I'm like, one thing that I tell anybody that I know that are singing, I'm just like, you're the singer, right? And if there's songs that you know that you're good at, sing those songs.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, you may not be good at those songs, so be able to understand that there are certain.
Oh, is that
things,
a hard message to deliver?
Right. That is right. So it's like, and I'm guilty of it too, right? There's songs that I just can't do on drums. I can try, but you know what? I know that I'm just not near it, and I will never attempt because it's just not. Yeah. It's just not in me for that, and but you having that clear role of, again, not only it was trust. That was, it was like where you were like, we could put a bunch of different songs together and mash them up. And I would be like, well, okay. Obviously it would have to be with the singers. And that would, again, another area where I'm just like, look, guys, you are the singers, you are the performers. I can handle the stuff from the business side of things.
Yeah.
But where I do need your help is on the musical direction side, because I'm not singing. I don't know these things. So that was a huge help.
So anyway, that worked great. And now to share what I've learned from you is actually the problem with me is I can do everything, but then sometimes you bite off more than you can chew. So for me, integrating that 8 component is interesting. Earlier, you talked about, so I'm in this original music project, and it's like, oh my God, I'm recording it all. I'm playing bass, I'm playing guitar, I'm playing banjo, mandolin, I'm doing keys. And, I've learned how to mix. Thankfully, I've gotten enough sense out of myself that I'm actually putting the mastering out to somebody else. But, I've realized like, I could, if time was infinite, I could probably learn all these things and do them well. But if I want to move this project forward, I have to step outside of that 5 energy that just wants to study everything and get good at everything and do everything at a high level and get more comfortable playing kind of your role, which is delegating and being the container of direction and force of the band, but then realizing who has these strengths and letting other people do other things. So you mentioned earlier, like in short, I mix some of the more fun kind of cover songs that the original project Laura and I do. But I'll actually be delegating the mixing and some of the bigger tasks because I'm really trying to get out of that 5 energy, which focuses on knowledge and competence and just trying to be good at everything, and realize that if I want to move this original project forward, I got to take a little more of Alan energy.
Yeah.
I got to focus on the things I'm good at, but then let other people handle other things. And even in this podcast, I mentioned, I'm looking to, I know how to do the audio, I know how to do the video, but I'm looking to delegate some of that to free up some time.
And I think, but also not lose the enjoyment of what you enjoy doing.
Yes.
Right. I think because and again, it's called the acceptance of knowing what you can't or what you should give up, right? Because if you're like, okay, you know what? I love mixing and mastering.
Yes.
But that time I don't have, because if I have to do that, I'm only one person. So if I want to continue playing bass and keyboards and guitar and singing and whatever, unfortunately, you're just one person. If there was 30 of you, right, you could do everything. But also,
make it happen, AI.
Just trying to, it's coming, right? To where you can still enjoy what you're doing, but accept that, right, you're not going to be able to do everything. So freelancing things out, stuff that you may actually do, I think you've already, again, like you've said, the time you already know, you're like, it's just not going to work. But at least you still have the enjoyment of writing the music, recording the music.
And I enjoy the mixing. It's just I enjoy in general the playing of the music and the writing of the music more. So that's where I'm like, I need to step out of the mastery kind of skill department and step into more of the managerial kind of leader compartment.
And from a health perspective too, right? I mean, you think about it, if you're pulling yourself in 37 different directions, right? It'll catch up to you.
Yeah.
So
So anyway, that's why I liked being in a band with you, because that stuff was taken care of. And now I realize that I have to be, if I want to get my own project of a duo, which is tough. I mean, it's great when you have all these people bringing their skills. A duo is tough because you got 2 people that are trying to move a whole thing forward. So anyway, I'm trying to find some help behind the scenes to help it move. So that's kind of a positive impact that being in a band with you, had on me. So,
well, you'll have to tell me what I would be. So what's your positive that has actually impacted me? Is that, I will say, and maybe you can tell me if that's where I'm the 5 or wherever, how your positives or what I've taken from you. And
hey, I wasn't going to ask because that's a self-serving question, but I mean, if you have anything to mind that you want to share, I mean,
again, I think it was, for me, it was again, your ambition, your eagerness, you're willing to learn, but the ability to also stand your ground. So I was able to use like, okay, well, again, tunnel vision, but in reality, it's not just this way. Your creativity in both inside the band and outside of other, conversations we've had, private conversations outside of the band, I've been able to use that and be like, you know what? Because of how creative you are as a person and what you're willing to do motivates me to be like, hey, I'm glad that I was able to have an impact, but also I'm glad that I was able to take some from you.
Okay. All right.
And I think that's huge for me.
Now, what is that like? I'm not like fishing for compliments here. I'm trying to understand what that actually means tangible. Like,
yeah. So I can try to be creative, but the big thing is for you was the mashups for the band. We use the band.
Oh,
for them, right?
sure.
You're like, hey, well, you know what? It's gonna start and stop here. But
Yeah.
you know what? While that's stopping, I'm gonna put in a bunch of, stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, that's fucking awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome, right?
Yeah.
And I think the energy that you brought made me feel comfortable with myself, and also be like, you know what? Like, I enjoy being in a band with you. I enjoy playing with you, and it helps me to be a little less tunnel vision and just enjoy the surroundings.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. Creativity actually really requires you step outside of tunnel vision.
Yes,
Because you have it, again, if 8 is this hard driving, focused, disciplined, masculine force, creativity kind of just requires a stillness, an exploration, trying shit out that may not be good, trying shit out that might be vulnerable, it is a different energy too. Yeah, for sure.
Because again, if you're going down that path and you're going down that path full steam ahead, you could spend so much time to where being creative could have gotten you to that path much quicker.
Yeah, and that is
or less slower, but then that's what comes to territory.
Yeah.
Trying different things.
And that is kind of the 8 to 5 connection is, it feels like if I take my foot off the gas, I'm losing momentum. But one image that I always have is like you're banging your head against the wall. If you would only step back and see that you could just walk around the wall,
why won't this wall move?
Yes.
Why won't this wall move? I know this wall can move. I know it can move. Let me just get there. And you're just like, okay.
Yeah. So that's where it's like, it's not always counterproductive to take a step back, learn about yourself, learn about the Enneagram, and then see things from a renewed, fresh, more kind of clear perspective or something.
And I think that's what makes the Enneagrams interesting to learn about, is because when you sit and talk with people that are familiar, like just being on this podcast alone, I've learned just from listening to you, right?
Right on.
You see how what your life entails just by having conversations and open dialogue from another person that's just pretty much having an open conversation with you. And you just see just by, okay, you're talking through things of like different things of life. And it's just like, wow, it's just crazy how some of these things come about.
Yes. And that's my goal with this, not to make it like so you're this type. How did you know you were this type? And how are you integrating? I don't want to, at first it just starts with a curious conversation.
Yep.
And then we can bring the Enneagram in to explain that. But it's not like a technical discussion. It's an open-ended discussion of life. And then this is how the Enneagram fits into it. And this is how it gets reflected through. So I actually love having a guest that isn't like an Enneagram expert, because then they can't just give back the theory or the right technical answer because they don't know it. They just have to talk about their experience,
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, here's another question I have, curiosity. You're in a band now where we actually both now kind of have the same, we're not in the same band, but we have the same band leader. And in a lot of ways, if I call you an 8-wing 7, he's kind of a 7-wing 8. So he's kind of, I think, fun first, and then, but also that kind of leader form thing, energy, big visionary for like where this band could be and what it could do, and then a lot of drive. So I want to know, like, what's your, again, in Up All Night, you kind of naturally fit this leader role because that energy wasn't present. But now you're in this band where that kind of leader role in that, hey, I know all the people to book, I know the venues to go to, like, that's already there. So like, how do you find yourself in this band? Like, are you still kind of in that leader role? Or are you more like a pure musician in that group?
Yeah. So again, kind of in the situation of the band that I'm in now, right, where there's more of the approach of, hey, I'm just a drummer.
Yeah.
Right. That's where, and that was the goal of being asked to join this band, that was my intent. Right. I was, when I was approached to join the band, they had asked, okay, this is kind of how we see this band going, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, perfect. And I'm perfect. And I am, again, acceptance, where you're just like, what things do you want to control and what things don't you want to control? Mm-hmm. And that's where going into this band, I'm like, you know what? I am happy with what's been happening. Right.
Okay.
So I think going into it, and what we discussed is how I am. Yeah. And I don't have any reasonings to not want to do that.
No, like, oh, we're doing it this way, we should be doing it this way.
Not entirely. I think, again, it just comes down to going back to the conversation earlier, where just know that there's 5 people that are in the room that are all professional musicians that have been around, that know a thing or two. And that's pretty much how it's been.
Cool. Easy going, huh?
Yeah. And I mean, and for me, I enjoy it because it's pretty much more of that role of, hey guys, this is what we're going to be doing. I've done this and I've done that. Cool. And I'm like, perfect. Because you get to a certain point where, you're like, you've been there, you've done it, you've put in the work, and you never want to get to a point where once it becomes a job and you're no longer having fun, that's time to get out, because you're doing yourself no favors. So every show that I play, no matter if I'm managing or if I'm just hanging out in the back drumming, it's fun. But I still know the business that needs to go into it. Don't get me wrong, right? Obviously, the stuff that needs to succeed, but I'm perfectly happy still where I enjoy what I'm doing.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Same for you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. We're back. We had a little break here. I have to say, I think that just to discuss where we wanted to go, I had a bunch of questions. First of all, I'm glad we did this.
Me too. I'm glad.
I was in band with you for a long time. The fun thing about this is like, these were legitimately curious. I didn't know the answers to these questions. I was legitimately curious about it. We talked about a lot over 6 years, but some of this stuff I didn't know. So it was fun, entertaining for me. I had a lot of places I wanted to go in this conversation.
Stay tuned for more.
Certainly the relationship, I wanted to explore the 2/8 dynamic a bit more, and some of relationship. I know that there was a time in the band where we weren't sure what Alan was doing in relationship or if he was ever going to commit, but there were a few women that came to shows at various points, but then there was this one that came to a show, and then she came to another show, and it's like, oh, okay. We're seeing more of her. And then she became Alan's girlfriend, and then she became Alan's fiance, and then she became Alan's wife.
And here we are.
So that was definitely a topic that I wanted to go down. This conversation's been feeling pretty complete, pretty long. So people, if you want to hear more from Alan and you want to hear about what it's like to be in a relationship with type 8, maybe comment, and then maybe we'll be able to do a future episode here with his wife, and we'll get a Enneagram relationship perspective, which I think would be awesome and interesting. We haven't done that.
You have her at a what type?
A 3.
3.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think there's some really cool things about that come and a show and would be super informative. So if you guys would be down for that, I think that would be a fun experience for me. Again, I'm curious about it, but I think it'd be also informative to a lot of people to
like
see.
And subscribe.
Yes.
Comment.
Thank you.
Let us know what you think.
Yes. But to wrap up here, I think we've seen a lot of the Enneagram 8 dynamic kind of come to life. Yeah. The leadership, the dedication, the drive, the focus, the taking a step back, getting other perspectives, the learning to kind of generally care about the people you're working with and all that. There's one topic that I've been curious about that if we have, what is, you can read all the Enneagram, philosophy and, these 8s are these driven type, each type has their own kind of philosophy and kind of mottos that they live by, so to speak. And you have one that's tattooed on you, don't you?
I do.
Yes.
I do. So I have a tattoo on my back. And the tattoo basically, again, it was my first tattoo when I was 18 years old.
You already answered my call. I wanted to know what age you got it. Okay, 18. All right.
18th birthday. And it says self-made. Right?
Yeah.
So it says self-made on my back. And I think, one of the big things that I stand by, I've gotten shit for over the years, right? So it's like the playful type 8. It's like, you got that on your back, blah, blah, right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And, it's just something I've been like, you know what? It's been a piece of me. And, my whole thing was there's guidelines in life that, you should follow. Right. I mean, there's rules and things like that, but actually guidelines. and you are what you make yourself successful at. Only you can make yourself successful, right? So it's like, the big thing I got was, well, you're self-made. You're not self-made. Your parents raised you. Your mom and dad, right? And I'm like, I get that from the the biological standpoint, medical side of things, right?
Yeah.
But from a true person, self-building, information gathering, right? Learning stuff, right? I feel like that's your true self that you can only build.
Yeah.
And I think so for me, that's where that comes from, is being in my mid-30s. Where does the future hold, right? But I know that I can follow guidelines, or I can follow ways. And again, this may not be the right answer, because not being super creative, or maybe you can be creative within these guidelines, but you just follow guidelines, and I think you are what you make yourself out to be. You choose your own path, right?
Yeah.
If that's a good answer for you.
Well, it's your, we're getting your full, I think it touches on some important points in that, certainly we all have certain opportunities that are given to us, but, at the same time, if you don't make anything of those opportunities that are given to you, so I think 8 really focuses on what you make of those opportunities.
Yep. And it can be anything. It's from great opportunities, bad opportunities. It's all what you do with them.
Yeah. And I think another important point, almost anything you say about life philosophy or self-help can be true to an extent, but then have some untruth associated with it or something.
Yep.
So I think and that's what 8 brings to the table. Make the most of it. Don't wait around. Don't wait for something to happen. Initiate it. Take charge. Make the most of it. And one of the shadow kind of places that can go is, you mentioned not liking the diva, not liking the person who overinflates their own self-importance, But I think you even balance that out in the discussion of the band, where it's as much as you're the leader, as much as you're initiating things, without the band and without the people, you're just a drummer. It's exactly it. As much as you made it, or might think you made it, or might think that you're important because you're doing all this stuff, or the boss, the CEO of a company, it's what are you, have a good person under you quit, and you'll understand how important you are, and then how important they were, and all that stuff. So, I just think it's interesting, and it's telling that that's a phrase that resonated with you and stuck with you, and that's what you live by. I think
it's a type 8 tattoo.
If we were doing an Instagram meme page,
it's
it fits the story, but in a kind of stereotype characterized way. But I think the goal of a podcast like this is not to just, make a stereotype or a character, but fill out the character, with the more details and the subtleties and the nuances. So thanks for doing that. Yeah. Thanks for talking truth.
Yeah.
All right. And let us know if you want Alan on for a relationship conversation in the future.
Or if not, just be like,
no. Because I do.
I'd be happy to.
All right, great. Thank you.
Cool.
All right.
Pleasure to be on.
Yeah.